What if the absolute greatest medicine you could possibly give your body is simply not eating?
It sounds completely backwards, I know.
Right. But welcome to the deep dive. Today we are unpacking a stack of notes from a source called Mission 180, and the mission we are on today is to explore a hidden superpower. And we're not talking about something theoretical here or like a futuristic biohack.
No, okay.
We're talking about a mechanism that is existing right now, literally encoded into your biology, just waiting for you to flip the switch.
Yeah, it's hiding in plain sight.
Yeah.
And the reason this material is so compelling is that it fundamentally challenges how modern society conditions us to think about health and energy and, well, medicine.
Right, because we're universally taught that food is the sole solution to fatigue.
Exactly. You feel a mid-afternoon slump, you reach for a snack, you feel foggy, you drink some sort of caloric beverage to, recharge.
Yeah.
But we almost never consider the biological tax our bodies pay simply to process that constant influx of fuel.
Okay, let's unpack this. Think of the human body like a 24-hour diner. It's this bustling, highly complex operation. You've got cooks sweating over the grill. You've got waiters frantically running orders.
Yeah.
Dishes are just piling up in the sink.
A very busy diner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, if the doors to this diner are open constantly and the customers never, ever stop coming in, the chefs are locked into a state of perpetual cooking. They're endlessly flipping burgers and frying eggs.
Right.
And because the staff is completely overwhelmed just handling the constant influx of new orders, they never have a single moment to shut down the kitchen or sweep the floors or, scrub the grease traps.
Yeah, the diner metaphor brilliantly illustrates the baseline problem we see in the Mission 180 text. We're looking at a stark contrast between two completely different approaches to running the human engine.
Right.
One approach keeps the biological diner open permanently, which forces your system to deal with the constant chaos of incoming nutrients and the resulting metabolic exhaust.
Exhaust, yeah.
And the other approach strategically locks the doors, turns off the open sign, and allows a deep cellular cleaning protocol to initiate. And the physiological consequences of which path you choose, well, they dictate almost everything about how you age and how you stave off disease.
But before we can get into the actual mechanics of that internal deep cleaning, the source material forces us to confront the trap of constant consumption.
We have to look at the modern habits that actively block this cleaning process from ever starting.
Exactly. And the text introduces this highly relatable character to illustrate this. His name is Seth Karodimal.
Seth Karodimal is, he's the absolute poster child for the modern dietary schedule. The notes describe a man whose mouth is moving practically every 2 hours.
Every 2 hours.
Yeah, he is relentlessly snacking. He has his morning tea, then, a mid-morning biscuit, then a savory item before lunch, then an afternoon pick-me-up. The intake just never stops.
Never stops.
And the core misconception driving Seth's behavior is fascinating. He genuinely believes that by eating this frequently, he is maintaining his energy levels. He believes he is, stoking the metabolic fire.
I have to stop you there and challenge this premise. I am someone who exercises a lot. I run. And the prevailing sports nutrition wisdom, the advice we've heard for decades, is precisely what Seth is doing.
Right.
If we're constantly told we need to fuel our bodies to keep our energy up, it feels entirely counterintuitive to just stop. Are people like Seth essentially trapping their bodies in a permanent, exhausting state of digestion?
The short answer is yes. The grazing paradigm is biologically exhausting. Digestion is one of the most energy-intensive processes the human body performs.
Wow, really?
Oh, absolutely. When you eat, your body diverts massive amounts of blood flow to your gastrointestinal tract. Your parasympathetic nervous system engages to break down complex molecules into usable substrates. By grazing every 2 hours, you are demanding that your system remain in a constant state of processing. Because Seth never stops eating, his body never crosses the threshold out of digestion and into its natural cleaning mode.
So that energy he thinks he has.
The energy he feels he's gaining is mostly just the temporary spike of blood glucose, which is followed immediately by the lethargy of digestion.
So the cooks in his diner are just perpetually flipping burgers, and those grease traps are just overflowing with biological waste.
Yeah, the text points directly to the accumulation of toxins.
Right.
And biologically, we can define what those toxins are. Every time your cells produce energy from food, they create metabolic byproducts.
Yeah.
Think of it like cellular exhaust.
Cellular exhaust, okay.
This includes reactive oxygen species, which cause oxidative stress, and misfolded proteins that clump together inside your cells.
Gross.
Right. And when your body is constantly dealing with the incoming food Seth is eating, It simply lacks the bandwidth and the biological signaling to manage its own waste. The cellular exhaust just built up. The text draws a direct, causal line between this constant state of processing, the resulting buildup of metabolic garbage, and premature aging. Seth's engine is burning out faster because he never allows it to cool down.
So by frantically trying to keep his energy up with, like, biscuits and tea,
Yeah,
he is actively accelerating his own aging process.
precisely.
He is drowning his internal systems in unmanaged cellular exhaust. I mean, it completely flips the script on the safety of an innocent mid-morning snack.
It forces a profound biological question. What happens when we finally stop?
Yeah.
If grazing suppresses our waste management system, what is the exact mechanism that triggers when we simply stop feeding the machine?
And that leads directly into the core scientific concept of the source material. It introduces this biological switch and a term that sounds like it belongs in a sci-fi horror film, autophagy.
Autophagy, broken down, the word literally translates from Greek to self-eating.
Self-eating, which sounds terrifying, but the Mission 180 text frames this as the body's ultimate self-repair mechanism. It is the cellular recycling system.
And the trigger for this system is remarkably precise. Autophagy begins when insulin levels drop.
Okay.
As long as you are eating, especially the carbohydrates and savory snacks Seth was grazing on, your pancreas secretes insulin to shuttle that glucose into your cells.
Right, to deal with the sugar.
Yeah, and insulin is a growth hormone. It tells the body, hey, we have plenty of resources, build and store. While insulin is present, a cellular pathway called mTOR is activated, and the switch for autophagy is firmly locked in the off position.
So it just won't happen.
Your body will not clean house while it is actively receiving grocery deliveries.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's return to the diner analogy, but scale it up to an entire metropolitan city.
Okay, I like it.
Imagine autophagy as a highly advanced, futuristic recycling plant located deep inside this city. The city realizes it has a massive trash problem. All the metabolic exhaust, the oxidative stress, the cellular garbage we just discussed.
Right.
So it builds this incredible recycling plant that doesn't just incinerate the garbage. It actually breaks the trash down to its raw molecular components and turns it into pure, clean electricity to power the grid.
The ultimate upcycling.
Yes, the ultimate upcycling solution. But the wiring of the city is highly specific. The recycling plant only powers on when the food delivery trucks stop arriving at the city limits. If even one truck is spotted on the highway, if even a tiny spike of insulin is detected from a splash of milk in your tea, the recycling plant shuts its doors.
What's fascinating here is how perfectly the science of autophagy maps to that upcycling analogy. The human body is astonishingly efficient. It abhors waste.
Yeah.
When the external food supply finally ceases and insulin levels drop to baseline, the body still requires energy to keep your heart beating and your lungs expanding, so it turns inward.
Okay.
A nutrient sensor called AMPK detects the scarcity and essentially sounds the alarm. The body looks around and says, we need fuel, what can we use? And it begins hunting down old, damaged, and senescent cells.
Senescent cells.
Yeah, these are often referred to as zombie cells. They're cells that have stopped dividing but refuse to die, instead just sitting there secreting inflammatory chemicals.
Literal zombies.
Exactly. And autophagy consumes those zombie cells. It breaks down the misfolded proteins and literally manufactures fresh energy from its own garbage.
It is identifying the biological bad actors, eating them, and forging good energy. I mean, the implications of that are staggering, especially when the text moves from general longevity to specific diseases.
The stakes could not be higher. The source specifically highlights that this cellular recycling system is a primary defense mechanism against devastating conditions, explicitly naming cancer and Alzheimer's disease.
Wow.
And if you look at the mechanics of why, it makes perfect sense.
Let's dig into that why, because we hear about Alzheimer's constantly, but the text suggests this self-eating process directly combats it. How?
Well, Alzheimer's disease is heavily characterized by the accumulation of amyloid beta plaques and tau tangles in the brain.
Right, the plaques.
These are essentially clumps of misfolded proteins. Neurons are incredibly sensitive to this kind of cellular garbage because, unlike skin cells, neurons do not divide and replace themselves frequently. They have to survive for a lifetime.
Okay, that makes sense.
Autophagy is the exact biological mechanism that acts like a microscopic Pac-Man, engulfing those specific misfolded proteins in a structure called an autophagosome. taking them to the lysosomes and dissolving them before they can form the plaques associated with cognitive decline.
That is incredible. And cancer. We usually think of cancer prevention as, antioxidants or avoiding radiation, not fasting.
Right, but cancer often begins with damaged organelles, specifically mitochondria, that leak reactive oxygen species and damage cellular DNA.
Okay.
If a cell's DNA is damaged, it can begin mutating and multiplying uncontrollably. By activating autophagy, your body hunts down and digests those damaged mitochondria before they can corrupt the DNA. You're clearing out the exact cellular damage that serves as the precursor to tumor growth.
So by constantly eating, by reaching for that mid-morning biscuit just to keep our mouth moving, we are actively suppressing our own built-in defense mechanism against cognitive decline and cellular mutation.
Yes.
We are prioritizing a fleeting sense of fullness over deep physiological maintenance.
We trade profound cellular repair for a temporary blood sugar spike.
Knowing the unbelievable power of this internal recycling plant and knowing exactly what is at stake if we never let it power on, the obvious question is how we actually do this in the modern world.
Exactly.
How do we practically schedule the shutdown of our digestion when we're surrounded by a society built on constant consumption?
The source material addresses this practical application by introducing us to a second figure, Master Dinanath, and his strict system of intermittent fasting.
Master Dinanath is the absolute antithesis of Seth.
He really is. Master Dinanath operates on a very specific set of physiological rules designed to maximize this recycling process. The most prominent rule detailed in his method is highly regimented. He consumes absolutely nothing after sunset.
Nothing. Not a snack, not a calorie. The kitchen is closed.
Closed completely. And by establishing that hard boundary at sunset, he effortlessly initiates a strict 14 to 16-hour fasting gap into the following day.
Wow.
He intentionally creates a massive, uninterrupted window where no new fuel is entering the system, forcing the body to look inward.
So what does this all mean? If the golden rule from the source is giving the body a minimum 14-hour break, how does this actually look in practice? It seems like sleep does a massive amount of the heavy lifting for us here.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of how energy is stored, the elegance of Dinanath's 14 to 16-hour window becomes really clear.
Okay, so lay it out for us.
When you stop eating at sunset, your body doesn't instantly jump into deep autophagy. First, it has to burn through the readily available glucose in your blood. Then it has to tap into the glycogen stored in your liver.
Right.
It takes the average human body roughly 10 to 12 hours just to deplete those liver glycogen stores.
So for the first 10 hours, you are just burning through the dinner you already ate. You haven't even touched the biological trash yet.
Exactly. The magic doesn't happen until that liver glycogen is exhausted. This usually occurs while you are deep in sleep. Only then, around hour 12, 13, and 14, does the insulin drop low enough and the AMPK sensor ring loud enough to fully power up the cellular recycling plant.
So it's timing it perfectly.
Yes. During those final quiet hours of the fast, your body is hunting down senescent cells, clearing out the misfolded proteins, and forging fresh energy. You aren't meant to be awake and white-knuckling your way through the hardest part.
Yeah, that would be miserable.
You sleep through the preparation phase, and you wake up right as the deep cleaning is hitting its peak efficiency.
You do the deep cleaning of the diner while the lights are off, the doors are locked, and the customers are gone.
Precisely.
And the text lays down a very crucial milestone regarding this practice. While it frames intermittent fasting and triggering autophagy as an incredibly beneficial practice for anyone, it states that after the age of 58, this system becomes absolutely mandatory for longevity.
The word mandatory is used very deliberately. It speaks to the cumulative burden of cellular damage over a lifetime.
Okay.
When we are in our 20s or 30s, the body is highly resilient. It can tolerate Seth's constant snacking because the baseline accumulation of misfolded proteins and zombie cells is relatively low. The recycling plant is naturally more efficient.
Right, you can bounce back.
But the text makes it clear that biological aging is essentially the progressive failure of this exact cleanup process.
So the trash accumulates faster than the city can naturally manage it?
Yes. By the time a human being reaches the age of 58, the burden of senescent cells has scaled exponentially. The risk curve for the diseases we discussed, like Alzheimer's, cancer, metabolic syndrome, it begins to hockey stick upwards. The text is drawing a hard biological line in the sand. If you want healthy longevity past 58, you can no longer rely on youthful resilience. You cannot afford to leave the diner open 24/7.
You just can't do it.
You absolutely must force the body into that 14 to 16-hour window every single day to aggressively clear the escalating waste.
It makes me think of the maintenance schedule on a high-performance vehicle. When you drive a car off the lot brand new, you can probably get away with skipping a scheduled oil change.
Sure.
You can push the engine hard, run it hot, and it will forgive you. But once that odometer hits a certain high mileage, once you hit that 58 mark skipping the scheduled maintenance isn't just risky, it is guaranteed to blow the engine.
Absolutely.
You have to let the machinery cool down, you have to drain the sludge and swap out the degraded parts.
Master Dinanath's system is the ultimate biological scheduled maintenance. By enforcing that minimum 14-hour break, he is ensuring that the accumulation of cellular sludge never reaches that critical disease-causing threshold. He is actively managing his microscopic biology through macroscopic discipline.
It is a profound reframing of how we interact with our own physiology. I mean, we have spent this entire deep dive looking at a complete paradigm shift extracted from the Mission 180 notes.
We really have.
We started with Seth Karodimal, who perfectly represents the cultural trap so many of us fall into, the deeply flawed belief that our vitality comes from constant, relentless consumption.
A belief that actually traps us in a toxic, exhausting cycle of perpetual digestion and accelerated aging.
Yeah, and we contrasted that exhausting cycle with the elegant science of autophagy, the body's self-eating recycling system. We looked at the mechanisms of how your cells hunt down the very precursors to Alzheimer's and cancer, the misfolded proteins and damaged mitochondria.
But only when we have the discipline to shut down the incoming food supply and let our insulin drop.
And we saw how Master Dinanath practically applies this biology by utilizing the sunset rule. By leveraging the natural fasting window of sleep, he effortlessly crosses that 14 to 16-hour threshold, forcing his body to literally consume its own damaged cells to manufacture clean, disease-fighting energy.
It's brilliant.
The ultimate takeaway from the source material is a complete redefinition of a feeling we try to avoid every day. You should not fear hunger. Hunger is not a medical emergency. It is the biological signal that your body is finally doing the necessary microscopic work to keep you alive and healthy.
Exactly.
We need to stop viewing an empty stomach as an enemy to be defeated and start recognizing it as the environment where healing actually occurs.
Giving our bodies the quiet space to heal is paramount. And, the source notes also point toward the depth of sleep and the body's unconscious recovery systems as the next logical frontier for this kind of physiological exploration.
Oh, interesting.
It makes perfect sense, given that the deepest phases of sleep are precisely when the brain physically shrinks to wash away its own metabolic waste, operating in tandem with the fasting window we've detailed today.
That is fascinating. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. A concept to carry with you the next time you feel the urge to snack, just to keep your momentum going. It is something that builds on everything we've just uncovered about the incredible self-cleaning machinery operating quietly inside you right now.
Yeah.
If human biology is fundamentally designed to consume its own damaged parts to survive and thrive, how much of our modern physical fatigue is simply the result of never giving our bodies permission to be empty? What if your truest, most enduring source of energy comes not from what you frantically consume, but from what you finally allow your body to subtract?